Hey friend, welcome back to another video. Today I want to show you an awesome new design tool that lets you turn your Figma prototypes into native mobile apps. I know it sounds too good to be true, but it is true. It's called Bravo. Let's take a look. Bravo is a no-code design tool that lets you connect your Figma designs to real data without any code. And through the use of things like containers and Bravo tags, you can create a fully functioning native mobile app. And with this, you can test on your phone directly using their APIs and integrations, and then you can even push your app to the App Store. So what do I mean? This all sounds nuts. Let's take a look. I'm gonna walk you through how I created a really simple prototype app. So we begin in Figma. Here's a design that I've set up in advance for a kombucha collective. This is a random idea I had for a way to kind of browse new types of kombucha, maybe save your favorite kombucha and get inspiration of new cool featured kombucha. If you cannot tell, I love kombucha. So I essentially have two key screens in my app. I have this home screen, which has the featured kombucha and then a list of other types of kombucha that I can browse. And then I also have a favorite screen where, let's say this is kombuchas that I have favorited and wanted to save for later. So I've already set up all of the links to this prototype. So all the connections and points have been already done in Figma using Figma's built-in prototyping features. And now we're kind of ready to start using Bravo to bring this to life. Let's dive into the favorites screen. So I want this screen to be an automated, populated scrolling list. So as you can see, I have just designed this one list item here, and then using Bravo, I'm going to populate this list with data that I've inputted into a Google Sheet. You can kind of think of Bravo as having three layers. You have your top level layer, which is essentially your app screen, so this entire frame. Then I have my second level frame, which is this list item, which we're gonna call a container. Bravo uses this concept of containers to define a block of content that you want to populate with data. So this second level frame is my container, and then inside this container is my third level elements, and that's all of these individual design elements like the image, I've got some text elements here, and then also the background. So I created my individual list element, and what I've done is I've actually wrapped this inside a frame. Now, when you apply the frame to this container, you want to consider the boundary or the margins around the actual container. So in this case, you can see that I've added some margin around my container, and that basically means that when this list item is going to repeat, it's going to honor these margins. So when this element gets repeated, it's going to be placed right below and aligning with the margin that I had set. Now, if I didn't have any margin here, then it would basically place this element right underneath with no spacing between. And we don't want that, right? We want to give our elements a little bit of room to breathe. Another pro tip here is to make sure that you set your frame boundaries to be the width of the screen. That way you'll avoid potentially any overlapping elements later on. So the next key thing we need to do now that we've got our container, it's inside a frame, is to actually label this frame as a container using a Bravo tag. This tag will allow Bravo to actually identify this frame element as a repeating list and as a container of content. So to do that, all you want to do is add asterisk list to define this element as a list item, and then in parentheses you want to give this the Bravo tag of container. Now Bravo will know to treat this as a container, and because we've also identified it as a list element, it will know to start auto-populating and repeating this element down the screen. What I've also done is labeled each of these individual design elements with something that's kind of descriptive, because later on what we're going to do is we're going to connect each of these design elements to a cell in a Google Sheet. And I want to be able to quickly identify which one is where the brand name is supposed to go, which one is going to have the rating. So by labeling these nicely in my layers panel, I'm going to be able to identify really quickly which text element is supposed to be populated with which information. All right, let's look at the data set that I've set up. So I decided to use a Google Sheet, but Bravo also supports Airtable if that's a tool that you prefer. So here I've set up some columns and then inputted data down the rows. For image, you do have to use a URL, so I just copied the image address of images that I wanted to use and put them in here. Now to use this data in Bravo, we have to turn this sheet into an API. And you can do that really easily using a tool called Sheety. So to set this up, you want to go to your Google Sheet and you want to copy the share link of your sheet. Then over in Sheety, you can paste the Google Sheet URL into here, give your project a name, save these changes, and essentially it will sync the data and turn it into an API endpoint. So here is the endpoint URL that I'm going to actually use in Bravo. We've got our Figma design, we've got our Google Sheet data as an API, so now let's bring both of them into Bravo and actually see the magic in action. So here I am over in Bravo and I'm going to import my Figma file using the share link of my Figma file. That's going to import nicely. Now let's add our data source. So I'm going to go over here to Data Library and click on New Collection. I'm going to call this Kombucha Project, and data source, I'm just going to say it's a Google Sheet. So I've set up my data point, my request is set to get, and I'm going to copy and paste my endpoint URL into the request URL and click Send. You can see that it's brought in all of the data in my sheet. Now you want to make sure that you select this one, the data sheet 1, and have this drop down selected to all. Then you want to select all the other data that you want to bring in and connect into your prototype. So for me, that's all of these ones. Now Bravo saves automatically, so I don't need to click save or do anything here. My data is ready to use. So let's connect these data points to my prototype. Head on back over to projects, open up my Figma file that I imported. Now let's start with this favorites page. So I'm going to open this up, and then here I'm going to select my Kombucha project collection, and then I'm also going to make sure my request is set to get. Now I need to select my list container that I made. So I'm going to add app element, find it in this list here, and then I want to bind this container to the overall sheet. Now I want to add all my third level individual design elements that I want to connect to data. So I'm going to select all of these ones. And then over here, I'm just going to connect them to the right set of data. So we've imported the data, we've connected the design elements on our screen to the data in our sheet. Now it's time to preview this and see if it's working. So I've downloaded the Bravo Studio app on my phone, so I can open up my project here and preview. Yes, check this out. So you can see that not only has my list element been populated with data from our Google Sheet, but it's also repeating all the rows that we have in the Google Sheet. So now I can see a whole list here of my favorite kombuchas. It's pretty sweet. So that's how you create a list. I've done exactly the same thing for the browse section on the featured page by turning this into a list container, connecting it to the data sheet, and then it gets pre-populated. But not only can Bravo create lists, they have a whole set of different Bravo tags that you can use to do different actions. So they have this whole master list of different Bravo tags that you can use. Here's the container one that we've used. I've also used the menu slide Bravo tag, which you can see here. If I show you my menu, I've labeled this frame the correct Bravo tag so that the menu will slide in and out when I interact with it. You can also do things like embed a video or a GIF or use Lottie animations. You can even open up the email dialog on your phone. It's pretty cool stuff. Let me show you one other thing that's really cool. So here in my design, I have a share button, and I've actually used a Bravo tag here so that when you interact with this share button, it actually brings up the share sheet on the device. Now, this is super exciting for me because it is the first time as a designer that I've actually been able to do something with a Figma prototype. I've actually been able to kind of bring it to life and make it a real thing. Now, if I wanted to, I could actually push this to the App Store or test flight by requesting the API from Bravo, which takes about 10 to 15 minutes. which is pretty cool. So what I really like about Bravo is it is designer first and it is no code. So as a designer, I can actually bring my designs to life and take it a step further than just having it as an interactive prototype in Figma. The possibilities of being able to use the Google Sheets, Airtable, Zapier to kind of bring everything together is exactly what someone like me needs as a person who is more into the no coding tools. It basically gives me a lot of power without having to code a single line. I also think it's pretty cool that Bravo honors the prototype that you've set up in Figma. So whether it's micro interactions or like carefully refined transitions that I want, that's all gonna be pulled across into the actual app. Now I did hear a sneak peek from the Bravo folks that audio support is coming soon, and they're also working on a full communication API. So you might have seen that right now you can only get requests, but soon you'll be able to actually push requests as well, which is gonna open up a whole new world, I think, for this tool. Bravo is completely free to use. You can have up to 3 projects at one time, and I will leave a link below where you can go and get started straight away. Alright, thanks friend for watching. Make sure to check out Bravo in the link below if you're interested in giving it a go, and I'll see you in a future video. Bye!